Good morning. I'm Jim Check with Now Media. With me, Ian Burns. We're going to kind of have a movie theme today. And our big movie theme, High Plains Grifter. The budget, the Canadian budget, the good, bad, and the ugly. And then some of the other headlines, the long anticipated budget, the huge potential conflict identified in there, or at least we identified it. The new climate grift being walked in nice and slow. Conservative betrayal. Budget reaction from everyone, and a big surprise, CBC gets money. Imagine that. Liberals take an axe to the $2 billion tree program. Liberals say they'll be taking back control of immigration. Didn't they have control? Liberals cut luxury tax. That was surprising. And on what? Health crisis, just one of many woes for David Eby. Big win for the Democrats in the United States. Or was it? All that and a lot more, but budget is the big topic, though. Budget. Everybody's talking about the budget. And we're going to break it down a little bit here. I mean, we only got so much time. We're going to try not to go too long, but this budget we've been waiting for quite some time. And we finally got it delivered yesterday. And there's some good stuff in there. There's some bad stuff in there, and there's some ugly stuff in there. But you could argue there's some good stuff in there.
And the tax thing looks quite interesting. The tax incentives for, basically, we might as well basically say rich people. It's quite sort of favourable to investment to try and get rich people to spread their coin among us peasants. And then other than that, it's the military. This is a military budget. I'm very surprised, actually. I haven't seen the CBC and all the rest of them, the way that they've looked at it, and they've tried to characterize it in certain ways. For me, there's only one way to characterize this. It's a military budget. This is a defense budget. It's basically the only interesting thing, the only thing of consequence in this budget is that there's going to be $80 billion on defense.
Well, let's break it down. Let's just kind of go through this a bit here. So it's like about 78, little north of $78 billion. So south of the $100 billion, that was the number that was thrown around. And I think they let that number get thrown around so they would say, well, see, it's only $78 billion, which is still more than any of Trudeau's budgets. But their plan, building Canada strong, this is what their pitch is. More than 75% of their actions this year are to respond to significant global economic shifts. So there's some contradiction in what they're saying there as well, because they're saying they have the best deal with the United States compared to everyone, yet we seem to be doing the most of the whining. So I'm not sure how you put that together. But the middle tax cut, which they talked about, that was their campaign promise, which is supposed to work out to $800 per family. But the PBO's office says it's more like $268. That's middle class tax cut. Canceling the consumer carbon price, which they did that as soon as they came in, but there's a new climate tax coming in. Build Canada Homes is one of the things, and Ian's right there. The big one is investing in defense, and we'll see how that all plays out, right? So, and just in these generational investments, we're going to kind of just go through this a little bit. Housing, $25 billion, which they've talked about, which is some modular home stuff. Defense and security, $30 billion over 5 years. There was a little bit of talk. I think we talked a little bit about that yesterday too, or maybe that was Renee. They're going to cut back, or they're going to even get rid of some of the equipment, the older equipment, so they don't have these high maintenance costs. But there was an interview there with the retired general that was running the place, and he said, we don't have any equipment then. Like, as bad as the old stuff is, we won't have any if we have to wait for the new stuff. Infrastructure, $115 billion over 5 years, not really identified as what that is. And then productivity and competitiveness, 110 over 5 years. Again, not sure what all that relates to. Canada has the best deal of any U.S. trading partner, yet we seem to do most of the whining. If 85% of our Canada-U.S. trade is tariff-free, why all the hand-wringing all the time and the world's coming to an end? It's definitely a contradiction. It's that next slide there. It's a definite contradiction as to what. In one moment you say it's the best deal ever, and the next moment says we're at, like economic war with the United States. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
It is the central contradiction, isn't it? It's a contradiction at the heart of this government. I suppose all governments, you could probably argue, have a contradiction at their heart, and this is the central contradiction of this Liberal government. Is that everything that they do is justified by the idea that we're at war, basically, with the Americans, and that the world has changed. We're back to the 1940s in terms of how dramatic this change is. And yet, on the other hand, everything's fine. Champagne saying, Canadians are going to be happy and they're going to sleep well tonight. We're safe. We're a strong country, and we got the best deal with the United States.
We're
So
gonna
which
get
is
to,
it?
we're gonna get to the good, bad, and the ugly, though. This is the good, though. This is still the good. Public service versus capital population growth. So they say they're going to cut, but that's again kind of like through attrition and retirements. So, because there should be a lot of boomers retiring out of the government. But look at the growth of the federal public service population, though, and look when that growth started. Take a look at that. Can you guess who was in power there? Look at how it stayed with the Canadian population, and all of a sudden it just went north.
I keep hearing all these things about how bad this chap, Stephen Harper, don't know if you've heard of him. Keep hearing that he was terrible. CBC, the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
So I'm going to guess it was Stephen Harper that did that, was it?
No. I think you're wrong.
No? What?
But they're projecting to bring it back in line. But I mean, this is gonna happen just with AI, and I mean, if they don't use AI to make themselves more efficient, I mean, that bloat that was put into the government in 2019, basically during COVID, they hired like drunken sailors, and we've done story after story after story on waste in government departments, waste watching Netflix, like streaming, partying. No controls, just crazy. And then here's putting direct program expenses on a sustainable track, and that's been growing like crazy as well. So they're going to cut that back. So that means don't be looking for a lot of new programs, like the dental programs, all these programs. So they say they're going to start cutting that back to stick with the budget, but we shall see, right? I mean, this is just a budget.
Yeah, we should emphasize, by the way, that this is coming from the Liberal government itself. This is their own propaganda that we're looking at. So it's not necessarily accurate. And a lot of this is subject to, it's still being scrutinized now. But the initial reaction a lot of people had has already changed. Like on the public service, for instance, at first people thought it was 40,000 people were going to lose jobs, but it's actually positions. So it's only something like 16,000 actual people that are going to either, well, they're not going to be fired, I don't think, but they're going to be sort of moved out. And with the defense, we just looked at that picture, that 30 billion over 5 years. That's not what they said in the budget. It's very confusing. It says just under 80 billion. But that's because they're messing around, aren't they? As people like this always do, and you as an accountant know better than anybody. This is precisely what numbers people do, bean counters in the political world. They hide things, they confuse things, they conflate things. So don't look at this as the final word on the budget, or even the honest word on the budget. This is what the Liberals want you to think about their budget.
There's a Trojan horse hiding in this budget. I'm a CPA, and I dug through this. There's a Trojan horse hiding in this budget, and we nailed it. I've been talking about it for a while. We nailed it, though. Said yesterday, guess what's going to be in the budget? We said an emissions cap removal. Bingo. Nailed it. And carbon capture. It's in the budget 18 times. That's what's going to get replaced by. So we're going to talk about that in a bit. But that's the Trojan horse that's hiding in this budget. 483 pages or something like that. And a lot of it just because it makes your eyes kind of swim. A lot of nothing. You put a lot of nothing around a couple of Trojan horses in there. But again, here's by bringing costs down for Canadians, this is a lot of nothing. Cancel the divisive consumer carbon price. The one that didn't add to inflation, the one that did not add to inflation that they were adamant about. Cut taxes.
The tax, apparently.
Cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. We talked about that. $840 a year up to, but PBO's office said it's more like $250 or something like that. So. And again, here's some climate stuff, Youth Climate Corps, National School Food Program. It's kind of sad that Canada has to have a school food program that people can't feed their kids at home. Canada Strong Pass, a coupon. This is what they're highlighting, this coupon in here, Canada Strong Pass. Like, I mean, a lot of nothing, right? A lot of nothing for sure. And then, you know, like the big one that they're talking about is enabling $1 trillion in total investment. And this is, again, over a number of years, and it doesn't really lay it out. Infrastructure, $315 billion. Supports for private R&D. And if you dig through that number there, there's going to be a lot of tax credits for, guess who? 60% tax credits for carbon capture. Housing, $130 billion. Industrial development programs, accelerated depreciation and immediate expensing. That is one of the things that was taken from Trump's big, beautiful bill. So there is some, that's a really good one for Canadian businesses. Accelerated depreciation on investment in capital. So there's some other tax incentives there, and $1 trillion to be spent in that regard. But, you know, like I mean, our quality of life here in Canada has gone from 9th to 27th. This is from Pierre. We'll get some reaction after that, though. But these nation-building projects, this was rolled out a while ago as well. So this is just put into the budget. Remember these critical mineral strategy, where they're going to start fast-tracking, you know, some mines and that. Wind West Atlantic Energy, wind, I guess. You know, like that was Anita Anand with wind. Pathways Plus, and here it is, carbon capture, an Alberta-based carbon capture and storage network pipeline project that will substantially reduce emissions and additional energy infrastructure that will support strong conventional energy sector while driving down emissions. This is the one. This is the, no, go back. This is the one this is the Trojan horse that's hiding in here. And the Arctic Economic and Security Corridor, and the setup of a all-weather dual-use land-to-port infrastructure. And that's the Port of Churchill as well. And then this high-speed rail, Justin Trudeau's farewell. I doubt if this thing ever gets built. I just don't see it. Not at this price, anyway.
No way. Not on that timeline. Not that price.
You just put it in there. Chance. Just like, why don't we put that in there? Look at this.
Well, it's great, isn't it? It literally goes through majority
of the big voting bloc,
you know, ridings. If you add it all up, it creates a majority by itself. And that's obviously why they did it, just to say, like, don't forget us, guys. Please vote for us. And I mean, that's the other thing with the public service jobs. You have to remember, we're not just talking about, this is not economics. None of this budget really is economics. It's all just politics. And when it comes to public service, it's not just Mark Carney looking at a kind of spreadsheet and saying, all right, we'll save money here, we'll save money here. These are his, these are his patrons, basically. These are his supporters. This is his political base. So it's kind of internal politics, that, to some extent, with the public service. And that kind of applies to almost everything here. I mean, certainly things like pathways and the wind and all. I mean, it's politics rather than a central bank as he presents himself, just sitting there trying to make the best possible economic decisions.
And then here's a good piece, and this is taken right from Donald, and I talked about it a while ago, taken from Trump's big beautiful bill, and that's just to accelerate, you know, investment incentive and immediate expensing of depreciating capital and that. So encouraging companies to invest by allowing them to depreciate the capital that they put into play right away, and that will help. But and this is where this Trojan horse is here. This industrial, and nobody's really picked up on this yet. This new climate strategy. Get ready for it. And we've been talking about, because Tim Hodgson has been kind of laying the groundwork for this. They've been laying out the groundwork. You know, that American company that's come to Canada, carbon capture, that they touted, which has that carbon capture thing. They're going to get, I think it's like 60+% investment tax credits, and then the ability to tax our energy industry. So the industrial emissions cap, which we said they were going to scrap, and there you go. They're talking about scrapping the emissions cap. And then the industrial price becomes the core of the plan. So they've not taken away industrial thing, because Carney talked about, we'll talk about it later here, how other countries are wanting to have a carbon border pricing a scheme. I don't know who wants it. Like, because again, Trump signed deals with Japan, Germany, and South Korea.
And the European Union signed a really bad deal. So did the British.
Yeah.
both big on this kind of thing. They begged the Americans for a deal,
And
but
none of them
apparently they'll only
asked
do
for,
business with people that have these policies in place.
not even in the carbon pricing, no other major world producer of oil has taxed their oil like Canada. And yet we continue on it. So here's 1.3, Canada's climate competitive strategy. So the climate action is not just a moral obligation, it's an economic necessity. And like, again, we just said, the Americans signing deals left and right. They don't seem to see the economic necessity. Though obviously we're seeing it from a different set of glasses. The world economy undergoing historic transformation towards low carbon energy and clean technology. How did the Americans sign all those deals? It's weird, no?
It's almost like they're selling people things that they want, and they don't care about how they were produced. I mean, what is the rise of China over the last 30 years, if not that? People will choose the bottom line over anything else. Doesn't matter if you make your solar panels with slave labor, people will still buy them if they're cheaper than the ones produced elsewhere. But apparently, Mark Carney sees the world differently. Again, I mean, he is super smart after all.
I mean, I don't think anybody else is talking about this, but I believe that this is the Trojan horse in here, and it's carbon capture. The best scheme is to do one that takes a while to lay the groundwork and then just have all the pieces come together. And here, if we look at this, it's a couple years back, some of these headlines. Brookfield invests billions in carbon capture and decarbonization. Brookfield closes $20 billion close sets record for global clean. Carbon capture and storage. Brookfield raises $20 billion for a record transition fund. So all these things, as Brookfield has invested, go to Brookfield's website. Look at what they do, carbon capture. And this is what's going to get introduced here in Canada. Tim Hodgson has touted an American company. The tax credits for these people coming in for carbon capture is 60%. And then plus, I think there's some provincial incentives as well. I think it was up to, we did the story, it was up to like 70% or 67%. For just investment tax credits for carbon capture. And then the ability to sell these credits. And here's a little graph here, like of how this works. Industrial, so we got these companies that make CO2 emissions. Then you have this carbon capture. You can make up your own little diagram there. But the one that came to Canada was like a bunch of fans, HVACs. Basically, they suck the air through, wind. They suck the wind through, and then sequester the carbon, and then they put it in a tank, like this tank they're putting it into, and then they truck it. They don't show the trucking here. They truck it, and then they bury it into the ground and then sell those credits to these carbon-emitting companies or energy oil field companies or even anybody that's making stuff. Because this is all died in the States. And that company that came to Canada, you can go back and watch our issue on it, or you go to my LinkedIn, you'll find it. The company that came to Canada said they had to leave the United States because Trump killed the big green bill or whatever, and all the credits are gone. And they said it's too expensive to do this technology anywhere else in the world, and there's no viable option to like make money with it other than Canada. Perfect.
The Canadian taxpayer.
So the Canadian taxpayer.
That's the fruit to be picked.
The Canadian taxpayer is going to fund all these American companies that can no longer be viable in the United States selling carbon capture credits because the world wants a carbon pricing thing. But the Americans somehow have got around it when they signed their deals. Amazing, no? How did they do it? Perhaps somebody should pick up the phone and ask them, how are you selling this stuff?
How are the Chinese doing it? There's another question for you. How are the Vietnamese doing it? Vietnam, much talked about country for its economic importance right now. You know, these countries don't care about this kind of thing. India is another example. People are kind of like falling over themselves to try and do business with India. Does India do this kind of thing? Obviously not.
You're going to hear carbon capture, and they're going to release the emission. They've said it in the budget. They're going to remove the emissions cap, and Alberta's supposed to be happy about that, right? Hey, here you go. The emissions cap has been removed, which is great. But guess what? If you're going to produce energy, it's like the EV thing. Like you either buy an EV or you pay a penalty. So you can produce oil, but you pay the tax. And it's cool that these private companies are going to have the ability to tax our energy, isn't it? Brookfield, And it's just amazing how Brookfield is just ready for this, right? Just absolutely prepared. Like, you go back and read those headlines. You can go back, scroll back, how they're invested big. And that investment would fall on its face if it was relying on America right now, because there is no carbon capture schemes going in Canada. Karma capture, someone says. Yeah, it's carbon
Karma
capture.
capture, that's good. But this idea that, I mean, the fundamental premise, to use Mark Carney, remember when Mark Carney used to use that word all the time? Premise. He moved on to catalyze, didn't he? But the fundamental premise of this whole system is that you create a market, a
Yeah.
carbon market, and that, you know, companies will go to this market and try
But
and buy
here's the thing.
credits. It's
So
just such a
this,
strange thing to do. Anybody that studied either economics, psychology, history, politics, anything, any of those subjects, you will know that to create an artificial market out of thin air, literally selling air as well,
yeah.
is, you know, a very risky endeavor, to put it to
And
put it
Bear,
lightly, and not really in the grand scheme likely to work, is it? And we've seen in the past where governments have tried to fabricate markets out of thin air. We've seen this happen in the 20th century, particularly, and lo and behold, it didn't work.
do you know what? Do you know what does work better than injecting this carbon into the ground and not knowing what's down there? And you're selling these credits. Who owns what credits? And like, you're selling people stuff they don't want, and you're charging them a lot for it. You put it in the ground. But you know what does a better job of all this? There's little trees right there that they've grayed out because they don't like trees anymore. Trees should be green. So the trees do all this naturally. Anything, actually, grass does it. So anything with photosynthesis actually processes carbon and releases oxygen. But apparently you can't trust, on the Carbon Capture USA, the website, it says trees can't be trusted anymore. That's why they need to do carbon capture, because trees light on fire. Okay.
Well, we've heard as well that climate change, because of climate change, trees don't even absorb carbon anymore the way they used to, like they did in the good old days. So
Photosynthesis no longer works, apparently, I guess.
no, it's all done.
But Mark Carney's out there. He's going to now pitch this budget because they haven't voted on it yet. So now he's out there pitching. Here he is this morning out there. You got the hard hats in behind him.
Where's his hard hat?
Around the industrial carbon pricing, there was some language in there that admittedly I'm a bit confused about. I'm hoping, considering this is kind of in your tool, your sandbox, you can help me out here. There's some vague reference to how we're going to consult with the provinces and territories about strengthening the industrial carbon price, specifically around when the federal backstop goes in place.
Yep.
We've seen those changes around a consumer carbon price, getting it down to the price of zero, effectively killing it. Are we going to see something similar? What assurances can you give to? What assurances can you give to Canadians, to members of your own caucus, that these changes, that these consultations with the provinces and territories won't lead to an immense weakening of the industrial carbon price?
The assurance is in the budget, where we talk about strengthening the industrial carbon price and strengthening the backstop. And there's various ways to do that. And as you probably know, is that different provinces have different carbon pricing approaches, different carbon markets in some cases. In some cases, those markets, for example, are very liberal, if I can use the term, in their credits that are provided, and so the effective carbon price, there's a big gap between the effective carbon price and the backstop price. There's ways to work on that. And we believe in cooperative federalism, so we don't just say by fiat this is what you're going to do. We work with the provinces in order to, as I say, to tighten the system.
Can I just get clarity on one other thing? I think during the campaign, maybe during the leadership campaign, there was talk about a carbon border adjustment mechanism. I didn't see that in the budget. Maybe I missed it. Is this still something that you're pursuing?
Look, the issues around carbon CBAM. First thing. The carbon border adjustment mechanism, pardon me, the fact that we have an industrial carbon price will provide us market access for countries or jurisdictions, the European Union being the obvious one, that put in place a carbon border adjustment mechanism. So it is important. There's lots of reasons why it's important to have an industrial carbon price, but one of the reasons why it's important is for market access. And if we are diversifying, as we need to do, if we've taken one lesson from the experience of this year, it's that we need to diversify our markets abroad. It's an important component. There's a question whether we put in place a carbon border adjustment mechanism. It's something we're looking at, but it wasn't a budget initiative to do that. Thank you.
That's good. That's good. There you go. But again, the Americans don't have any carbon adjustment prices yet. They're doing all the deals. I don't know how they're doing it. Maybe they're lying.
But also the idea, is he absolutely certain of this, that the European Union and South Korea and Japan and all these countries won't do business with us unless we have something like this in place? Is he really sure of that? And can he show us the evidence? Because I'm not sure I can see it anywhere. I know the Europeans have talked about this, but the Europeans are full of you-know-what, you know? They do all kinds of stupid things, the Europeans. They say loads of things and then do completely different things. Like the Germans now, buying God knows how much LNG from the Americans. They were even buying stuff from the Russians through the Indians, two countries that don't bother with this bollocks. I mean, for God's sake, you're betting on the European Union. You're betting on the European Union being honest when they talk about things like this in the first place. Evidence suggests otherwise. But you're also betting on the European Union being some kind of fountain of growth. It's a stagnant bloc. It hasn't really seen serious growth in a very long time. And then East Asia, obviously those countries in East Asia would rather survive. That's what they would rather do. So when it comes to trying to contain China, they'll work with anybody that helps them do that. I just don't think this is grounded in reality. That's my fundamental objection. I like my leaders to be in reality with me, and I don't get the feeling that that's where Mark Carney is. But I just want to give credit, just a quick shout out to somebody that said that Gregor Robertson looks like Giga Chad, which I don't know if you're familiar with that meme, but it's like a meme with this man who has like a giant chin. And he's like, I don't know, people, if you know it, you know it. And yes, he does look like Giga Chad. It's very, very funny.
Well, the world has moved on from climate hysteria. Even Bill Gates has come out and said that the world needs to move on from climate hysteria. And he was like one of the grand poobahs or the pope of climate fear. And he's moved on. Yet Canada, and again, if we pull back up those, we don't need to pull it back up, but you pull back all those Brookfield, you can go on yourself, look up Brookfield, just put the words together, Brookfield and carbon capture, and you're going to see the amount of investment that Brookfield has made in carbon capture. Then go look at Tim Hodgson's touting of this company that's come to Canada, Carbon Capture USA, and how many more of them will be welcomed into Canada here in the next little while, because there's no business case for them in the United States, like Trudeau would say, no business case for them there because they don't get any tax credits. Come to Canada, take our tax dollars, and then we'll also give them the ability to tax our energy companies. Isn't that amazing? And again, does Saudi Arabia tax its energy with carbon pricing? Does it? The United States sure doesn't. So how are we competitive if we're going to add, like this supposedly carbon border pricing mechanism into place, carbon capture? Again, maybe we should just ask the Americans how they do deals for energy without this carbon pricing border mechanism, CBM or whatever he's calling it.
Or any other country, like in East Asia particularly, which all the attention is being directed to, East Asia and the Europeans. I mean, come on. You just have to just go on like Bloomberg or something like that, or Reuters, go on one of the main sort of news agencies and just read about the sort of things that are happening in international trade, and then look at the countries involved and see if they have this kind of system in place. If they don't, what is Mark Carney talking about? This is not abstract academic like wonkery or something that only 5 people understand. This is really basic stuff. Anybody can test this theory.
So one truth that CBC and the other mainstream medias have not picked up yet is that this budget is very similar to Trudeau budgets. It's the big pillar is climate. The big pillar is still climate, industrial carbon tax, whatever you want to call it, climate. And the world's moved on. Bill Gates has moved on. And yet here it is, Canada.
Even he's changed his tune.
Canada and Brookfield don't want to move on. Why? Why don't they want to move on? Because Brookfield has invested billions of dollars in this, and they need a way to get this money back. Remember what Carney said at the UN too. Listen to that speech again. We need to move this investment into carbon capture from weak hands to strong hands. The strong hands being government. And there's only one government right now that's willing to pay for this stuff, and that's Canada.
And this is coming from Mark Carney, who's described himself as a pragmatist, and Francois-Philippe Champagne, who's also described himself as a pragmatist. And even last night, when he was trying to promote in the media thing after the budget, he's trying to promote the budget, he was asked, why did you get rid of the tax on boats or whatever it was, luxury boats, something like that?
Talk about
he just said because it was inefficient, it cost more money to administer than it raised in revenue, and I'm a pragmatist, so I got rid of it. How is this pragmatic? How does this align? How is it possible that they can say one thing and then with their next breath completely contradict it? I can't see how this is efficient. I can't see how this is pragmatic. None of it makes sense.
From an investment perspective, they've invested billions of dollars. Brookfield and a lot of the people, don't forget Mark Carney led this climate stuff. Him and Bill Gates would be sitting at the front of the room together. They led this. And the only place they're going to make money on this right now is Canada, because the United States has killed all of it. There is no credits left there. So where's all these carbon capture people going to show up to? They're going to be here to milk Canada for it. They're going to take a bit.
And in the process, they might bring global emissions down by something like 0.05% or something like that. You know, that's where my question about pragmatism comes into it, because
you're missing the
at the end of the day, that's what this is all supposed to be about. It's all supposed to be about getting those emissions down. That's supposed to be like basically their only aim, and they want to achieve that by, any means. Well, how is that pragmatic if that's the result?
I think it's more about return on investment. And again, go back and read those Brookfield investment things. Carbon capture mentioned 18 times in the budget, 18 times. Carbon, I think it was 98 times in the budget, 98 times. So there you go.
Did you do Control F pipeline? That was one of the first that I did.
And how many?
You'll find if you do that, do your Control F pipeline, and you'll find that it's a metaphor. There are five examples, and most of them are metaphors where they say, we're going to curate a pipeline of international businesses. So not a real pipeline. A metaphorical pipeline.
That's what was missing in here, and I was going to say that. That's the other part of the ugly. No mention of a pipeline to our coastline. That's what makes Canada weak right now. I mean, that's only common sense tells you. No other customers for our oil other than the Americans, really. I mean, there's some dribs and drabs that go out of the TMX, but other than that, it's America. And here we are protecting ourselves against America, and we've done nothing to do it. It's what I mean. It's all just. But again, if you look at carbon capture, you're going to see that a lot. So the green activists unhappy with Carney's budget, though, despite the strengthened carbon tax. The green would rather you just. I don't know what they'd rather you do. But I mean, I don't even know how they really have a say. They have one person, one seat.
Well, they also have a lot of influence in the Liberal Party and obviously the NDP as well. And they have a strange sort of relationship of convenience with the Quebec nationalists, where it's more about trying to get Quebec out of Canada rather than some deluded idea that they're going to save the planet.
We got some reaction here from some of the other parties, though. The Tories condemn the waste for Liberals. NDP promises a review. So, this budget just north of $78 billion. I mean, this is the budget, remember. Remember how good was Trudeau Liberals at keeping to their budget? Remember, I think their budget was 40, you know what I mean? Like they were nowhere near their budget. They blew them by almost double.
Yeah, they did. They were notorious for that. Yeah.
These are just budgets. I mean, you'd hope that Carney would stick to a budget, but we shall see. I mean, this will be a test to see where they stick to it. But we do have some reaction, though. But the biggest reaction that happened, and this is, I guess, the Conservative betrayal, is Chris, I can't even pronounce his last name,
D'Entremont.
Look how quick they updated his status on the website there. Like, obviously, this was in the works. The House of Commons updated his status to Liberal. He walked across the aisle. So what do they need? 2 more, and then they have a majority. And they don't even need to beg anymore.
And word on the street is that there are at least, I think, 2 or 3 Quebec Conservative MPs that are thinking of, walking down the aisle with Mark Carney there. And this fella, I mean, he only won by a few hundred votes, I think. It was a very tight win. And apparently, according to online chat from people who were MPs, former MPs, he was freaking out. Apparently, he was really scared that he was going to lose the election. He's going to lose his riding if an election was called over this budget. So he had kind of like a personal motivation. It's like, well, if this budget doesn't pass, there'll be an election. If there's an election, I'll be unemployed. So I'm going to make this budget pass. That's what is cynics have alleged anyway. That was his rationale.
Here's Pierre Poilievre's reaction to the budget as well, though. We'll listen to this clip.
Liberals have introduced the most costly and largest budget deficit in history outside of COVID. The cost of this Liberal budget will drive up the cost of food, housing, and everything else that Canadians buy. And the Prime Minister has broken every single promise he made just 7 short months ago. He promised a $62 billion deficit. He delivered nearly an $80 billion deficit, $16 billion bigger than he promised and twice the size that his predecessor left behind. He promised to lower the debt to GDP ratio. He raised it, and inflation along with it. He promised to spend less. He's spending $90 billion more, costing $5,400 per family in Canada. And that $90 billion, to the Prime Minister's heckles, is above and beyond the promised $16 billion that he says he will one day find. And if he doesn't find them, it will be over $100 billion in brand new spending to respond to the Prime Minister's heckles, Mr. Speaker. He also promised that he would invest more. His own budget document lays out a graph showing that every quarter of this year will see private sector business investment collapse. This costly budget forces Canadians to spend more on debt interest than on health care transfers. More than the government collects in GST. That means every dollar the Canadians pay in GST will go to bankers and bondholders instead of to doctors and nurses. All while he raises the industrial carbon tax on farm equipment and fertilizer and therefore food, on steel, concrete, and other industrial projects needed to build homes, a big tax increases on homes and food.
Some good points there. I mean, certainly that about the debt interest payments. That's what makes it real. I wish more people would talk about that, and I certainly wish our media would talk about that a lot more, like the national media, particularly Mr. CBC, because 78 billion deficit. That's just an abstraction. That doesn't really that doesn't mean anything to most people. But when you lay it out like that, the deficit that's just going to go into the big pile of the national debt. The national debt must be paid for. It must be serviced, and that costs tens of billions of dollars that cannot be spent on other things like healthcare or whatever you insert program. Can't be spent on that anymore. And I feel like usually that conversation is just not had, and that's so strange. I don't know if that's just financial illiteracy or economic illiteracy that sort of predominates now in Canada and the rest of the world. But I do wish that was discussed more often. But he's also right, and this is something I was going to say earlier. He's mentioned other things. He's mentioned about the deficit, but he is right to point out that Mark Carney is an oath breaker. He has violated his promises. That's the kind of, we now know a lot more about him as a politician. He's the kind of person that breaks his promises. That's very, very interesting information, and this budget has given that to us. It's confirmed it beyond all doubt, because he made so many promises. Like we talked about the Greenies, how they're upset. One of the things they're upset about is he promised during the campaign that he was going to put in the subsidy for people that buy EVs. The rebate wasn't in there, wasn't mentioned. He also said he wasn't going to cut foreign aid. He also said he wasn't going to cut. Well, he said he wasn't going to cut anything, really, didn't he? He said the Tories were the cutters, and he kind of banked on the gullibility of public service workers, and thinking that he wasn't going to cut anything, and now he's cut. So it's very interesting, and there are more. That's just off the top of my head, but he is willing to break his promises. Believe it or not all politicians are, but he seems to have done it very easily, and he's not concerned at all.
Well, you said one thing we wish the national media would do more. You can help us get that word out there. Because I think yesterday between our videos, we had over 40,000 views. So you can help us like, share, and comment. The CBC doesn't get that many views on a lot of their stuff. So, but they get $1.55 billion, and they get more money in this budget as well. Isn't it amazing how they seem to be able to they know how to access the till. But let's listen to Blanchette here. The Blanchette talk about what's in it for Quebec.
I hardly see how, after having met with our caucus tonight, we could vote in favor of this budget. Those $78 billion of deficit, whatever tricks they want to invent. There's nothing of what we did ask in the budget. And I must tell you that what the Bloc Québécois asked in order to maybe support the budget about elders, about healthcare transfers, about what we did ask, but one thing that was not given to Quebecers and given to everybody else would have been good for all Canadians, not only Quebecers. Still, the answer is no. This is a red conservative budget, which Mr. Harper might have signed. And there's nothing for Quebecers in there, absolutely nothing. We did ask what was basically the object of a large consensus within the population of Quebec. And the answer from a Quebecer, Mr. Champagne, is a blunt no.
I always look at these stage photos where they have the people stand behind them. And I always think of Star Trek, you get the red shirts that, aren't coming back from the planet. When they have these odd characters that stand in the back. It's such a overdone thing where they put the people in the background. It's just, and you just got to stand there awkwardly. Anyway.
Man, it's like Pierre Poilievre. I don't want to sort of pour the lava on his head when he's already screwed. He's not having a good day today. But he's a nightmare for that. Well, if it is him or not, I don't know. His media people, the way they orchestrate the press conferences, it's like, oh, we're going to talk about young people. All right, let's get 50 young people behind me. We're going to talk about immigration. All right, let's get loads of people of non-white origins behind us, so it looks like we're not racist. It's just like, it's a cringe fest with Pierre, I'm sorry to say.
And here's Vassy. I do like Vassy. Vassy is probably one of the better journalists on the national stage. Maybe you should come work for us one day. Let's listen in on Vassy here. Maybe we'll get that $1.55 billion that the CBC wastes, and we can. I guarantee if we get that, we're going to give Vassy a big check.
I would say my impression after going through the budget is the pitch is we have to spend this much. I know you're going to say invest, but you're spending money, you're spending taxpayer money in order to garner a significant growth in the return on investment. And my question to you is, like, how do you know that that return will come? And I put to you with great respect, you were the ministry who oversaw decisions to put a ton of taxpayer money into the EV sector that is now blowing up in all our faces.
People understand at home we have some headwinds. The world has changed. We live in a very different world. And the way forward for us, and I know you would want to use the word spending, but folks at home understand. When you go to the grocery store, you spend. When you buy a house, you invest. For government, it's about the same,
As you speak, it reminds me so clearly of a message you delivered as a different kind of minister under a different prime minister, but from the same party. When over and over the refrain from your government at the time was confident Canadians invest in themselves. And the promise was also for economic growth. Instead, what happened on a per capita basis is that GDP declined by 2.5% below pre-pandemic levels over the last 5 years. Liberals were not able to deliver on the promise that you're making tonight. Why is this time any different?
But in fairness, Vashi, the world has changed. I mean, people understand at home. The scope, speed, and scale of the change, I wish you would be at the G7 with me. When we sit together, we say what we're seeing today is unprecedented, probably since 1945. So you can compare a period before the world changed, when our largest trading partner decided to change the rules of the game, not only for Canada, but for the world. But you can compare these two periods. It's like if
But really, because you're saying the exact same things. We need to invest in ourselves in order to get a return on the investment, and you're guaranteeing that will come when it never did before.
Well,
You cannot compare.
Mm-hmm.
And again,
I wish you had been at G7 with me. He
I
loves his
bet
anecdotes. He absolutely loves to say, I wish you were there, or you should have been there, or were you there? That's what he likes to say. It's like, you don't have to be there to call out your budget, Mr.
But
Champagne.
if we go back to one of the first slides, one of the first things in the budget, we have the best deal of everybody. But according to him, this is worse than World War II almost, or as bad as World War II.
I'm trying to recover from World War II. That's kind of what he's trying to hint at, isn't it? And the new world order.
Don't we have the best deal ever?
But also, didn't he? He's told us more than once now that we can sleep easy. Canada's all right. So, okay, I'm not worried anymore.
That's his big point, and this is the real point. We've trusted you for 10 years, and you have not earned it. You've lost the trust. And now you're asking us to trust you again because you say the world is different. The world's always different. The world's going to be different tomorrow than it is today. That's just the way the world works. It just changes. You're just using an excuse. You got a new straw man for this, a new straw man for that, somebody else to blame. And you just don't answer. You just don't honestly answer any questions.
But he's good at hyping things up, isn't he? And that's another thing about this budget. Like, just cast your mind back months, but also weeks and days, and just look at or remember the hype for this budget, how this was going to be generational. That was the CBC's headline yesterday, I think, wasn't it? It was going to be a generational budget. But has it been? Is it? Is it such a big deal? It's kind of, that's another thing. If we trusted Champagne when he was promoting this budget before it was released, we would feel a little bit sad now, a little bit sort of betrayed, because it's obviously not what it was described as being, except when it comes to the military, which we all knew already anyway, because that's been talked about for a long time.
What I would say, if I had to sum this budget up into a sentence, it's a whole lot of nothing. Like, there's nothing in here. And the Trojan horse is what you really should be looking at. In this 483 pages of just nothingness is a Trojan horse that's buried in there that will make a few people very, very wealthy for the benefit of the few, the expense of the many. But other than that, there's a whole lot of nothing in there. Again, if you're touting a coupon is in there as one of your lead items, the Strong Canada Pass, a coupon, that means you don't really have anything. There was no new tax incentives really, other than the one thing in there. There is a good, like I said, there is a good one there for businesses, but nothing really for Canadians. Like, for every Canadian, there's nothing in there that I can find. Even CBC's come to terms with that, just like, well, there's not much there. But again, I want you to contrast Vassy with Francois Philippe Champagne. And now we got David Cochrane with Melissa Lantsman. Here, let's look at the difference.
The economic analysis on the impact on food puts it at 0.5 to 0.8%. This is what Trevor Toom and others looked at.
So you're telling me that the industrial carbon tax on fertilizer, on fuel, on farming equipment does not pass down in the price?
97% of emissions on a farm are exempt from
the carbon tax. I don't know how you can look Canadians in the eye and say that the price of food hasn't skyrocketed and these are the reasons for it.
Well, the price of food has skyrocketed.
Packaging taxes.
There's also currency changes. There's climate change that has led to drought.
You're a better defender of the government's budget than they are.
I have read Trevor Toom's analysis, and I go with the experts on this. Like, I think, anyway.
Expert? Remember when Trevor Toom, the expert, was the whatever they called him? They also went after him and said that, and Mark Carney did too, and they discredited that time when he wasn't saying the right thing. Now all of a sudden he's the expert again. Isn't that convenient? But also, convenient expert, right? Like, expert of
he used the plural. He said experts. So I don't know if Trevor Toom has split personality disorder or something, or is there more than one Trevor Toom? More than one famous economist called Trevor Toom? Or is what he's saying, I read a summary from Trevor Toom and now I'm just going to base my entire opinion on what this one person thinks, who, by the way, is funded by the federal government, is given money for his research to go off and do his analysis by the federal government. Usually journalists would mention that kind of thing. They'd say, by the way, audience, just on the record, everyone, just so we're completely above board, I'm talking about Toomsy, but Toomsy is also funded by the Liberal government. FYI. But he decided not to say that. And he also decided to say experts when he's talking about one man, one flawed human being. And he's basing his entire opinion on that.
And then again, we looked at, yesterday, we looked at the price of beef in the United States, Costco in Canada. Dramatically higher here. Dramatically higher.
And also, where was the supply management conversation? Why did Melissa Lantsman not bring that up? Oh yeah, because the Tories are spineless and they don't want to talk about supply management because they don't want to upset their little portion of the vote that they get in Quebec. But again, not mentioned by her, fair enough. She's going to try and deceive people on that. But also not mentioned by the journalist. Why not?
Here's CBC with a little bit of reaction saying not much in here.
Respondent Anne Gaviola has been looking for what's in this budget for individual Canadians. Anne.
Well, Donna, the budget re-announced some commitments like the middle-class tax cut and scrapping the consumer carbon tax. But in terms of new things, not a lot of nuggets in the budget to appeal to everyday Canadians. There are items that are framed as lowering costs and protecting consumers that won't actually cost the federal government.
That's good. No chicken nuggets in there. I caught you mid-sip there. Hey, no chicken nuggets in there. Because there's not much in there. Like I said, it's a whole lot of nothing other than the Trojan horse that's hiding in there. Nobody's caught on to yet. They will, though, because it'll come up more and more. This climate, the new climate grift, carbon capture, will start to take front and center as they move into it, as they start talking about the removal of the emissions cap. And the only way they can remove it is if we have this cross-border carbon pricing. And the only way to do that is if we have carbon capture and so that we're selling clean energy.
And with pathways as well, we'll have to see what happens to that. Somebody here, Digsy, good old Digsy, comes in and says, if you lose Quebec or lose the vote in Quebec, you'll never get a majority. Yeah, definitely. That is true. And that is why the Tories shut their mouth about that. But it's completely incongruent. It doesn't work with the rest of their politics or economics. You know, Poilievre's always gone on about freedom and freedom of choice. And when it comes to economics particularly, he wants to break down all the bollocks, all of the sort of superstructure that's built on top of the economy and bring it down back to sort of the natural basics of the economy, except with supply management. It's just, obviously, I know, Jim knows why the Tories do this. It's because they realize that they would never be able to form a government if they didn't. But I'm just pointing out that it's, you know, it is ultimately rather cowardly, isn't it? They're rather frit of that lobby. So they just suspend all of their principles when it comes to that one subject.
Canadians didn't get anything in the budget, according to Global Air and according to us. But guess who got money? The town crier for the Liberal Party made sure they got their face in the trough there, and they got their, you know, that $150 million bonus for CBC. Plus, they, you know, this Eurovision entry, which is, I mean, I don't even know what that is really. You know what I mean? It's just another chucking money at.
It's a good headline. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's a funny headline. It's a bit of it's a bit of popcorn, isn't it? It's a bit of sort of light entertainment.
Nonsense. The tree scheme, though, because obviously trees are no longer trusted to process carbon into oxygen. So Cabinet yesterday confirmed it will end its failed, this is Liberal policy, of $2 billion tree program after 6 years. And after spending over $250 million, $267 million, and the work of 50 federal employees, the Environment Minister Catherine McKenna announced the plan in 2019 as a huge asset. This was going to be, remember, this is one of, Trudeau had all those photo ops where he's on bended knee there and planting trees. And again, we talked about it yesterday. You know what else plants trees? Trees plant trees, just by seeds, right? Imagine that. Birds plant trees. But they were going to spend, you know, billions of dollars on this. The announcement is
$6 billion, is what it would have come to.
A profound disappointment. That's from the Canadian Tree Nursery Association. Of course, it's a big cash cow, right? It was a bad program that had to be cut. It is because the Liberals were unable to plant the trees. Again, I know who can plant trees. It would have cost $6 billion to fulfill their $2 billion tree. That's a lot of money per tree, eh?
This fella, though, woman, Christine Normandin, a Bloc MP, comes out and said, we didn't laugh at this program because we thought it was bad and it had to be cut for that reason, but because the Liberals were unable to plant the trees. What I find strange is, okay, the Liberal government, or Ottawa, federal government, whatever, was incapable of doing this, planting 2 billion trees. You know, putting saplings in the ground, pretty sort of straightforward, isn't it? And it was unable to do that. But somehow we're all supposed to sit here as dutiful Canadians and believe that they can do something like carbon capture at massive scale.
But hey, but listen,
you know what I mean? Like, why should we assume that?
You're not getting the point. They need this program to be discredited now because the replacement for it's coming. Because it's saying right here that it was a failed program. It would take 10 billion trees, 50 to 100 years old, non-new seedlings to sequester Canada's 730 million tons of annual carbon emissions. Those stats make tree planting helpful for drawing down atmospheric carbon over the next 2 centuries, but not for countering annual emissions. And lo and behold, the new and improved way to capture carbon is not trees. This doesn't count all the trees that are already here. Do you know what I mean? There's more than 1 billion trees in Canada. You know what I mean? They don't count that. So this new and improved, so right now, so here's the program. This is how it works in the stock market too. So first thing you do is you go after and discredit something that could be used as a, like an argument and say, oh, well, like, why would we do that? When trees process carbon, you don't have to bury it in the ground. Trees process carbon and release oxygen. That's part of what they do. Yeah, well, trees just aren't that efficient. We just don't have enough time. But carbon capture is much more effective. So there you go. Cue the solution. Here comes the solution. And guess who's been investing in that solution over the last few years?
Bam.
Imagine that. Bam. Yeah, bam. There you go. Take that. Bam. And this one here.
That's why it has that name, isn't it?
And this one here is tough to stomach as well. We are taking back control. Weren't you in control for the past 10 years? Weren't you in control? Taking it back from who? Hey?
Justin Trudeau.
They're taking back control of immigration. They expected to table updated immigration plans after healthcare has been just roiled, inflation, housing, everything. They're going to take back immigration levels, proposing a 43% cut in new temporary permits on foreign students and migrant labor. We're taking back control of immigration. Wasn't it always in your control? This is an admission of failure. But they don't say that, though. The system has evolved since the record high quotas maintained. There you go. Under then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Here's a bus, and there you go, Justin. You and Katy Perry and Diplo can go underneath it.
He's six feet under that bus right now, isn't he? He's become the new Stephen Harper.
But here's the new and improved. The system has evolved. They got a counter, I guess, or something. Its complexity has grown. Its efficiency has waned. What efficiency? Like, you set the quotas. You set the limits. Like, it's just ludicrous, right?
Going to have a lot of unhappy university administrators on $600,000 a year, though. And I'm not sure if the Liberals have figured out a way to appease that very angry lobby.
What was the name of that college?
I'll never know. I will never know. I'll never remember.
Contesca or whatever it was.
What is it? That's all like.
Contesco. We did it. He had over $600,000 salary, and that college was one of the prime beneficiaries of foreign students. And he said he just did.
Conestoga.
Conestoga, yeah.
Something. Yeah, I guess not.
Some small college that the dean is making $600,000 plus a year because he figured out how to milk the system better than anybody. Carney said the system isn't working. We need a cap. No, I mean, holy cow. Like, that is like a Captain Obvious. Thanks for showing up. And then here's another one. This is from Holly Dolan Blacklocks as well. You got to subscribe to that. It's a great service. CBC doesn't cover these stories. Why would they? A Reuben board for illegal immigrants is costing taxpayers just under $200 a day, $195. But that's a savings now, $29 savings from last year, new data shows. The Department of Immigration gave no explanation for trimming costs on hotel rooms, meals, medical care, and expenses. Average cost per room, $132 a night. I mean, this is great for the hotel industry, right? They were just, remember Olivia Chow there saying that she's going to send a bill to the feds on not paying the bills? Down from $140 a night, according to the figures detailed. And, that doesn't include snacks, though. Of course. The poor Canadian that's lived here all his life and out there homeless, no snacks for him. You're better off to cross the border, rip up all your documentation, and come back and claim asylum. No?
The thing is, it's bad. And every time we talk about these stories, it's shocking, isn't it? It's bad. But a lot of people in the comments, I don't know if you've been reading them, but they've been talking about my benighted land of birth in England. It is so much worse in England.
We're going to get to that. We got something on England at the end. We got something on the England at the end here, so.
Yeah, but I mean, in England, they're dealing with some astonishingly high-profile, gruesome crimes committed by these people who've been allowed into England for absolutely no reason at all, no justification to let them come, but they've just come and they're abusing the refugee laws. And they are given, I think in Britain, they revised it recently. It's something like 10 or 15 billion pounds. That's how much they're paying per year just to house and feed these asylum seekers. So could be worse, but yeah, we should warn about it, but we should also point to England, as is true in many cases. If you want to know how bad it can get, look at England in lots of areas, including net zero.
If I was Mark Carney right now, I would get some charter buses, no different than Texas did, fill them, and ship them to New York City. We're going to tell you why later, but we just fill the buses and put freedom on the front of the bus and just let them go. So that guy that crossed the floor there, he's being challenged. The MPs are challenging him to a by-election. The only Conservative MP elected in Nova Scotia was challenged. But it's not great news for Pierre Poilievre, especially if a couple more have crossed the floor.
No, and let's be honest, he's got this leadership review coming up in 2 months, 3 months, something like that. It's increasingly, he looked invincible, didn't he? Even when he lost his seat after the election, it was still the idea that he would be a goner was kind of, it's like, you're getting ahead of yourself. But now he looks very, very vulnerable. He looks more vulnerable than he has in his entire time as leader.
This hurts. This hurts to the nth degree. This hurts. Whether one more, if two more walk, and they give the Liberals a majority, that would probably be the signal the end of his leadership, because they would say that as he couldn't hold his party together.
But I was chatting earlier with our news director, Josh, and I was saying, who would be the replacement? There's no shadow. There's nobody in the background,
who's in
is there?
That is strong. Who's the strong voice there?
Jean Charest come back, maybe? Doug Ford or something? It's
Well,
who would do it?
Danielle Smith probably would be a great one, but I think she's got her hands full.
I also think that she would be rejected by Eastern Canada, wouldn't she? They would look at her as a kind of Alberta chauvinist or something, and they would reject her.
Would put her hand up because she runs for any party. Christy Clark would say, "Well, I'll do that."
Yeah. Well, she was a member, wasn't she?
This one is tough to stomach if you're a regular Canadian. Champagne cuts the luxury tax. Not on vehicles, because there's luxury tax on cars, right? Just a pickup truck, just a regular old pickup truck. Once you get over a certain price tag, luxury tax. But no, but on boats and personal aircraft now, luxury tax on boats and we're going to take that off, right? But not on pickups. You know what I mean? There's luxury tax on trucks, and you wonder why. Some people wonder why there's so many one-ton trucks out there, as opposed to just F-150s or F-250s. It's because there's no luxury tax on the one-ton, because it's considered a commercial vehicle. So people just upgrade if they get to a certain pricing. They're just well, how do you avoid the luxury tax? Well, you just buy a one-ton. So you're putting heavier vehicles on the road because they're avoiding a luxury tax. But the luxury tax was so low that I think at one point in BC it was like 50 grand. You can't even buy a regular car for that. You know what I mean? Just the average car. But hey, let's get it off of boats and aircraft. And the reason they're probably doing that is because they're probably people that have the ability to spend could just go south of the border and buy it. Bombardier sells jets, and there's some boat builders that sell boats. And so they figured, well, hey, we got to, it's about the jobs thing. It's not really about the other thing. So And here's the logic. Listen to this. If you've been lucky enough or smart enough or hardworking enough to afford to spend $100,000 on a car or a $250,000 boat, congratulations, Freeland wrote at the time. Thank you for contributing that little bit of good fortune to heal the wounds of COVID and invest in our prosperity. Luxury taxes and revenues in the first 6 months total $137 million. The budget office expected about $150 million. The tax worth, yeah. Records show a total of 578,000 foreign property owners filed disclosure forms on their CRA form. The majority of the 478,000 had no amounts owing. A total of 351 tax collectors were assigned to paperwork for $59 million. 351 tax collectors, $59 million administration cost.
Craziness, that, isn't it? That's a different one, isn't it? Is that the housing one? I mean,
yeah,
that's
there's
mad.
Spec tax, yeah, the federal spec tax, yeah.
But it's kind of, we've all heard, or people actually read about economics and politics, have all heard of the Laffer curve. And people were talking about the Laffer curve even when she announced these. It wasn't just this one, but numerous other taxes. It was like, this is not going to work. You're going to scare off rich people, or they're going to buy it somewhere else, or they're going to shelter their money somehow. And in the end, you'll raise less revenue than you would have done if you just not done it. But I was just reading that blast from the past, that little line from Chrystia Freeland there. Thank you for contributing a little bit of that good fortune to help heal the wounds of COVID and invest in our future collective prosperity. So I was reading that and I was thinking, like, gee, I wonder why Chrystia Freeland was basically a failure in politics. I wonder why. I just cannot believe that she was at the apex of the Canadian political system for the best part of a decade when she was that bad at communication and politics.
Well, some more bad news for Canadians. This thing, chicken prices are expected to rise by 20 to 25%. I talked about it quite a bit in the last few shows. Is how, if you go to the grocery store, you can see families standing there staring at the meat counter like they're buying jewelry, and they're planning ahead. It's almost like planning a holiday. Like maybe for Christmas we can have a steak because it's so bad. Now the same thing going to happen to chicken.
And there are restrictions on imports, aren't there? Courtesy of supply management, our favorite little system.
And then we talk about the median.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult to bring those prices down. In other words,
no cancellation in that budget of a Bill C-18. And Chorus,
yeah, obviously not.
And most of the media crippled because of Bill C-18. Chorus here, we talked about the other day, how they did that fancy restructuring of their debt because they're basically the Walking Dead. There's Globe and Mail writes that they're maintained as a sell. Like who would have? Like who buys that? Like, I mean, I think it's like 9 cents or something like that.
Terrible.
It used to be like almost a $20 stock. We got some BC news for you though. That's our budget for now.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
Our reporter Steve McNall went out and got quotes from everybody. I didn't get anything from Josie Osborne yet, but David Eby's got so many pots boiling on the stove. I don't know which one is in worse shape. Health is a big one though. We see ER closures time after time after time, mass resignations, Kamloops, all the OBGYNs, I think Vernon, the psychiatric department, and then here in Kelowna, the pediatrics, and then just on and on and on and on. And so it's a good story on Kelowna Now. You got some from the health critic there, Anna Kindy, our local MLA, Gavin Dew, and also our local MP, Dan Elbis. You can go read that story. And Kindy was a physician, 40 years, never seen it this bad. And like I said, there's so many pots on the BC NDP story. Again, an interview, a really good interview if you want to go watch it. Jonathan Kay, he was here to speak. And he said, as bad as Canada is in a lot of places, people wonder if we're okay in BC, that seems to be like a train wreck over here. He said, the Conservative Party in chaos and the NDP living in La La Land. What David Eby, and we're going to go on to that, what David Eby admitted yesterday, though, too, was like he was assured by the courts that they wouldn't go after the private land. Was there a side deal? That's kind of like a troubling thing that he said, because they didn't inform, this is the forestry store, but they didn't inform the landowners because they didn't think they had to, because they didn't think it was going to be at risk. Whoops, eh? Whoops.
But also yesterday, because he's at this meeting with all the First Nations in BC, or many of them anyway, he said something quite remarkable, which was like the Cowichan, talking about this decision in Richmond, he's saying the Cowichan people's land was taken from them unjustly, and what other word did he use? Unjustly and something else.
Oh, we have the
basically
clip here.
like
We're going to
tapping
play it
into a very old narrative, really, about this idea of the conquest of North America, which is quite outdated at this point. But also the fact that he's talking about the Cowichan. This whole thing rests on the idea that the Cowichan used to fish there sometimes. Not live there, not like build communities there over thousands of years or anything, but fish there and hunt. That's what this claim is based on. I mean, none of that seems to be factored in. It's just it's a very complicated discussion that needs to be had, but nobody seems to approach it with any subtlety or any desire to sort of highlight the nuances.
Well, let's talk about this story first. It's the forestry. Let's go back to that picture. And how many trees in that picture? Just that little picture there. How many trees there? Can you count them?
22,000.
A lot of trees. Those are all carbon capture, but apparently the stories are going to start coming out. You watch it. The stories are going to start coming out how, planting 2 billion trees just wouldn't do the carbon capture. That doesn't count all the trees that are there, though. Look, just in that little picture right there. Look how many trees there are. And then if you want to, you can go on Google Earth and take a look at how many trees there are in British Columbia and the rest of the boreal forest here. Just take a look. Just have a quick peek. But apparently those trees are now inefficient. They don't process carbon. So what are they eating or digesting to release oxygen? So we'd be just starving of oxygen at this point then, because if they're not doing it, who's creating the oxygen on this planet? Or does the carbon capture do that too? Does carbon capture do that?
Yeah,
maybe
that's what it is.
But anyway, Eby's here talking about at the forestry summit, saying that forestry is in a mess. Yeah, David Eby, the forestry is a mess. You're part of it. For 10 years, forestry's been a mess, and now you're blaming the straw man Trump. You created this mess. Canfor told you a long time ago. Uninvestable. Own up to it.
Yeah, I mean, in this same article, you've got an academic from, I think it's Carleton University, which is in Ottawa, coming out and saying, just forget it. Like, forestry's just finished. It's screwed. Like, just abandon ship and spend the money on other industries instead. Like, really? Obviously, this is the expert, although he's not actually an expert. I think he's an international affairs professor or something like that. If you look at that picture, is that the right approach? Just give up? Just abandon?
If you look at that picture, what does that picture show you? It's a renewable resource. You cut them down when they grow back. You cut them down, they grow back. It's a renewable resource that will last forever. What do we build out of those? Oh, right, houses. Weird. I used to work in the forestry industry too. 10 years. Lots of people make good money in the forestry industry. Maybe not so many now.
It's just a good export industry as well. Like, you have to preserve your exports. Any sensible country or jurisdiction or whatever does that. Make sure that they attach special significance to their export industries.
And then this question here, Eby, the question is Canada a nation? We're going to go to the next one. Canada a nation or a collection of provinces? Because now Eby, after talking tough, now is calling on the Canadian government, the feds, to protect his tanker ban, to maintain it. So he's and they've signed a declaration calling on the federal government, that's David Eby and the coastal First Nations, to maintain that tanker ban off the province's north coast.
Happening currently with that situation. What would you like to say?
Yeah, don't play that. We'll go past that because we're already running late. So we kind of played that yesterday anyway. Anyway, now he's basically trying to pressure the feds to maintain that tanker ban.
But it's also speaking out of two sides of his mouth, as he did yesterday when he was asked about the Richmond thing. All of a sudden, it wasn't all about people like residents and, you know, the people whose livelihoods and lives are now in chaos. It was about these injustices that supposedly occurred 2 centuries ago, something like that. I mean, this is just pure politicking, really. It's quite low grade as well.
David Eby is he's made so many messes and he's run out of ideas. Like he's in over his head. In over his head.
That's looked to be the case ever since the election campaign, I think. That's when real cracks started to appear in the Eby facade. He really, I mean, and he's even said it. He said he had a near-death experience. That's how, in his own words, he said that. And I think it was obvious at the time. He seemed to just panic, and he just kind of rescinded, went back on like the NDP's 5 years or something like that of policies. He just totally abandoned them all, didn't he, to try and survive?
Yeah.
And then he did survive, and then, you know, here he is. He's still a bit rattled.
We got some international news here for you.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
Yeah, so that Supreme Court justice appears skeptical that Trump tariffs are legal. So we're going to see that decision come down here. It's high stakes for Trump today. As Supreme Court hears arguments about his legality of his tariff regime. I mean, I think he's probably going to, anything that's in CUSMA is probably not going to fly. I mean, I think they're going to have to stick to the contract, and that's what I said early on. Just take him to court over the contract. Just like but at first they were just screaming, just take him to court, right? Stop all the screaming. Anything covered under CUSMA. The other stuff, you know, you're probably not going to get much luck with, right? But the stuff under the CUSMA contract, you're probably going to be fine with. Just go to court.
Well, this decision would affect the 35% tariffs on, you know, that he said he put in place because of fentanyl in the border. So that affects non-CUSMA stuff.
Yeah, and he's probably had.
I hear a different percentage every day, but 92% I've heard is covered by CUSMA. Then it's 85. I mean, I don't really know what it is.
You can't get a straight answer on either side of the thing here. But here, big day. Big day for the Democrats. You know, they basically swept those 3 elections, and or is it a big day for the Democrats, or is this the end of the Democratic Party? Because, you know, some people are saying that the far left of the Democratic Party has taken over the Democrats, which means the Mondami, what's his name, Mondami, who's, you know, like people call him a communist, and I think he calls himself a socialist, has won the New York mayor seat. Not a lot of competition, though, right? We have a failed governor, Cuomo, who was booted out, basically resigned as governor of New York, running as the mayor. Like, couldn't he find anybody better? And Eric Adams, they battled, you know what I mean? He had a lot of battle scars as well, a lot of accusations, and he didn't get much for votes at all, eh? Not a lot of faith in Eric Adams.
He was accused of pretty serious corruption, wasn't he? Involving, I think, Turkey? Or as Mark Carney would say,
so is Cuomo, though. But so is Cuomo, though. Groping, like how many female...
That's what I mean, yeah, Cuomo, yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, no, sorry, I'm talking about Adams, aren't I?
Yeah.
No, you're right about Cuomo. He also had scandals, for sure, yeah.
And even his brother, Chris Cuomo, was fired from CNN for basically grifting for his brother there. Yep. Anyway, we got a clip here, and they're kind of like, they're doing their panel on the election wins.
The story for tonight is actually that the Socialist Party is taking over the Democrat Party. And you know what? It was Andrew Cuomo. It was Kathy Hochul. It were the Democrats that were so afraid of their shadow, so afraid of the radical left. People like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez kept moving to satisfy them. And now they've been eaten alive. So this is a lesson for the Democrat Party. They should have fought for their party. They never fought for their party. They catered to the radical left. And now we're going to see, by the way, for people who think that they're voting for affordability here with Mondani, a guy who believes in socialism, we're going to learn the hard way in New York City what socialism is. Your taxes will go up. And if you pay property taxes, you won't be able to afford to live in your home. And if you guess what, you rent, it's going to be passed on to you in the form of your rent. Yeah. Mandates, look, mandates, fees, regulations, surcharges. We've seen it in this state, in this city, under one-party rule for the last decade. It costs money. It gets passed on to you. So if you think you're going to get a free ride with Mamdani, you're going to learn the hard way.
That's why the answer to the
let's play this other clip here from Mamdani here. I mean, he's a charismatic guy, but the New York City is supposedly the capital of capitalism, or was.
Oftentimes, we've even found as legislators, when we go into these courts, the term violent crime is even used when people are stealing packages. Violent crime is even used when people are accused of burglary and there happens to be a housing unit in that same dwelling. So violence is an artificial construction. And we have to be very clear that what is happening here with these district attorneys, that is violence. That is violence of the highest degree.
Package
Just
paradise in New York City.
Babble.
Hey,
Incoherent babble.
Package paradise in New York City. Steal all you want. Because
but this chap also sort of a tweet doing the rounds, literally still on his Twitter page now. He hasn't deleted it yet, or he hadn't last I looked, where he's casting doubt on whether you could really call it terrorism when some Islamic terrorists murdered a British soldier on the street in London, literally tried to cut his head off and went up to a camera with hands covered in blood, with a knife in their hands, and started ranting on about Islam or whatever the hell it was. And then, and he wrote at the time, "Yeah, I'm not really sure you could call that terrorism." This man is almost uniquely unqualified to do that job. But the people of New York City have selected him. So
I would say a couple of things.
What more is there to say?
I think, like you have perhaps in the capitalist city, we have like that wealth gap is getting bigger and bigger, and the people on the bottom end of that rung, which are the many, believe they're being forgotten, and anybody that will stand up and fight against the man, I guess, is somebody you're going to attach yourself to. But I don't think they recognize what's coming, because basically what he's saying is crime is a free-for-all. And that's why I say, if you're Mark Carney, load up the bus, put the banner freedom on the front of it, and just start sending him to New York City.
But that message, and some of the exit polls suggest that this is true, that message is directed not at people at the bottom, not at the poorest people. That message is directed at the overeducated middle class, people that have humanities degrees and understand that sort of gibberish, or they think that gibberish means something. That's who it's aimed at, and that's who he was popular with. Popular with white-collar people in New York City who have undergraduate and postgraduate degrees. Not so much the desperate sort of bottom 5 or 10%. The data suggests so far, that what we have access to, that they actually voted for Cuomo.
I think that old saying, he does not know what he did, or how's that go?
He knows not what he did. Is that what you mean?
Something like that. What may come from this, I don't think a lot of people are going to like the results. And there's a lot of people out there, pundits, saying that this is a good test case for America to see what socialism looks like and what happens to a city as great as New York City. We shall see. And then so
we've seen it. Look, it's not that long ago, within your memory, the memory of your life, that New York City was a complete dump that nobody wanted to go to. And you can still watch the movies from that time. When New York, from like the 70s,
I got a movie for you right here.
When New York is like it's the backdrop for horror movies, and there are so many different films where New York is just this like horrible dump, and like the subway is full of like zombies with knives and things. Like, it doesn't have a guaranteed position in the world as like the world's most important city or whatever.
See if you can recognize this city. Let's play a little clip here. Get rid of the music. Get rid of the awful, eerie music, yeah. Oh, looks pretty good, no?
Lovely. I used to live in a part of London that looked even worse than that. Believe it or not.
There you go. Coming to a city near you.
Yeah, parts of London are just kind of indistinguishable from, if not the third world, then the second world, if there's such a thing. Like from a developing country. Like there are parts of London that resemble a kind of almost like a favela. really, really wretched, like terrible poverty and ugliness and filth everywhere. But I mean, that's not like your typical London street, obviously. That's been done for effect. Like, that's been selected very much for effect. But there are places in London that look like that.
I drove through Compton there once, and I didn't know what I was driving through. I stopped at a gas station because it's just for the rental car thing. Yeah. Anyway.
I also did that, by the way, with my family. We were in a convertible.
Same thing, yeah.
We were driving around, and it was in Compton, and we asked a woman who was pushing like a pram with a baby in it. We asked her for directions, and when we said like, "Excuse me," she thought. My impression was she thought she was going to be shot. She was like, "Whoa!" It was like getting ready for the gunshot, and we were just like, "Hello, madam. Could you direct us to Disneyland?"
Tommy Robinson, your countryman, acquitted of all charges under the Terrorism Act.
Pretty funny. He just refused to give them his phone. He just said no, and they couldn't do him for it, which is interesting to say the least. I suppose that's a lesson to people, isn't it? Don't hand your phone over.
And then Grokkopedia started to grow. I don't know if anybody's tried it out yet, but Grokkopedia, the faster you kill Wikipedia, the better it says it will help you. But there's Chamath there. That's a former Canadian, Chamath there.
Wikipedia is an abomination, frankly, isn't it? It's and it's been that way for so long. And it's so sad, though, because Wikipedia is full of great stuff still. People have poured their lives into that in some cases.
It's been hijacked.
Yeah,
it's been hijacked.
It's been politicized.
Yeah, it hijacked and then turned into a left-wing lunatic echo chamber.
Well, just nonsense. Just whatever the current vogue is, really. It's like a kind of liberal left Democratic Party sort of mouthpiece. That's what it's been turned into, and it's very, very sad. Very sad.
The nice thing about some Democrats is they create their own ads for the Republicans. There's Tim Walz and Gavin Newsom going at it here. Listen to this.
But I think this notion of toxicity in masculinity needs to be separated, and I think it's been conflated. And I think we're going to have to work on that a little bit. And I think there is a crisis.
I think some of us scare them. I think I scare them a little bit. Why they spend so much time on it. No, I'm serious, because I can fix a truck. They know I'm not bullshitting on this. Yeah. I'm not putting this in people's grill. I don't know if my identity is not hunting. My identity is not football coaching. My identity is not, a beard and a truck. But
masculinity. I also find that so funny. Gavin Newsom saying, "Oh, we've got to get rid of this situation where masculinity and toxicity have been conflated." Who conflated it, Gavin? Who conflated it? Your people, your team. That's who conflated it. It wasn't necessarily that case before.
I'm telling you, if I walked onto a used car lot and Big Gav walked out, I'd be running. I'd be holding onto my wallet and running. Because Big Gav is like the closer, I think. Hey, he's good at what he does, right? Tim Walz is just weird.
Yeah, well, I think he's got like a crazy sort of ego. That's the impression I get from him. Talking about like, I think people are scared of it. They're scared of my masculinity. It's just like, shut up, man.
Tim Walz. Talking about yourself. Even Kamala said that was the wrong pick, and he doesn't even realize that he probably is not smart enough to realize that she dissed him too.
Maybe got a nice little Van Gogh thing there in the background, though. I like that.
Yeah.
Starry Night.
He is one. He's the governor still.
Yeah.
That's
and
it.
He's actually, from a Canadian perspective, he's like, he's on our side. He's trying to push Canada in national American politics. So.
Can we get somebody better? Can we get somebody better on our side?
Yeah, to be honest, they're not so great. The border governors, they're not the best, really.
Anyway, that's our show. That's the budget. Watch for it. Get start listening for it. Listen for carbon capture. Listen for these companies that are going to come to Canada. And they're going to take tax credits. Look in the budget. There's 60% tax credits. It's all set up in there. The 60% tax credit for carbon capture, emissions cap being removed, Canada's new way to compete in this climate competitiveness. They're going to COP30 here right away. And just listen to the speeches that are had at COP30, where Canada's going to, that's going to be like Mark Carney's glory. COP30 will be, that's his people, COP30. Everybody's moved past, even Bill Gates. Probably won't get an invite now, Bill Gates. But it's Mark Carney's world now as far as climate goes, because I don't know who else is in it. Who's in it? Who's still in it?
Who's what? Who's still
in on this carbon pricing? Because it isn't Japan. Yeah. I guarantee it ain't Japan. And it isn't, it ain't the United States. Ain't a word. But it is when you're talking about the Americans.
Well, the EU's kind of in it a bit still, obviously.
Who'd they buy their LNG from? Who'd they buy their LNG from? Russia. They bought it from Russia for.
They're still singing from that hymn sheet, at least. They're still paying lip service to it.
They're just clowns.
But China, India, the United States, you know, places like Turkey and a lot of the other up-and-coming countries in Southeast Asia, they were never really involved, and they're not, to my knowledge. They're not hinging trade deals on it, and they're not putting that ahead of their survival or their prosperity.
The Americans were big into it, though. They were big. That was that Inflation Reduction Act, all those things. That was, and you know, Canada built its whole climate model around the Americans, and it all fell apart. Yet we're still going down that road like we're going to go it alone.
And it made sense, I think, then, because what was given was access to the, or at least initially, I think it sort of broke down a bit, but it was like access to the Buy American scheme.
Yeah.
Because that's when what Doug Ford calls Fortress North America. That's when that looked like that was where we were headed.
Yeah.
So it kind of made a bit of sense then. But yeah, I mean, not so much now.
I'm sure Mexico is in on this, though, right? They're probably in on this carbon capture. Let's just call up Claudia Sheinbaum and see if she's into it. Anyway. Pierre Poilievre coming to Kelowna. We're going to see if we can get an interview with him here. We're going to try anyway.
Let's hope he's still the leader then.
There you go. That's our show for today. We're back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Please like, share, get this out there as much as you can. And we appreciate you. And we'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you for watching Now Media.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government.